Susie, welcome to the Shame-Free Zone, and thank you so much for having the courage to be here.
Thanks for having me, Veronica. And yes, I'll accept that pat on the back about the courage thing because it is kind of hard. It's ironic because one of my gripes, if you will, is that nobody seems to really want to talk about it and listen to it, but at the same time, getting the opportunity to do that here is, causing me a little bit of stress and anxiety. But at the same time, as I was saying earlier, I'm actually really happy to be doing it.
Well, I think the behind the scenes that our listeners might like to know is that we've actually had a little difficulty getting this thing off the ground because I think as survivors, perhaps we have both been a little bit triggered. And that's one of the things that makes the whole thing of sexual abuse a really difficult topic because if you have suffered any kind of sexual abuse, you have a tendency to be able to leave your body, not always know what you're feeling, lose time. It's just amazing what a powerful influence it can have on other aspects of your life without you actually consciously thinking about the event.
That's most definitely true. I mean, everyone is different, and their life experience is different. Their own rape situation would have been different, and so different triggers are going to come up any time in your life, and ideally you will be able to deal with that. And for me, I wasn't able to deal with my rape situation for, actually a good 15 years. I was in denial for 15 years. Of course, I'm getting ahead of the story here. I was gang raped when I was 16, a few weeks before I turned 17. And I was basically set up, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was set up, to make a long story short, by this girl who I thought was my friend, and she was about maybe 2 years older, and with this other guy and his gang. I grew up in Chinatown, so San Francisco in the 70s was full of gangs everywhere you looked. Anyway, so I was basically set up by her and one member of the gang who I was attracted to, actually, and I thought the feeling was mutual. And he was actually one of the lower ranking, if you will, members of this particular gang. So it really wasn't his idea. It was more some of the elder members' idea. So in many ways he was emasculated too. But okay, so I was gang raped, and this happened. I'm sorry?
When you say you were set up by this woman, I have to admit, I know these things happen, but I still feel shocked that a woman helped to set you up, and I'm just wondering what her motivation was. Was she trying to gain gang membership too, or?
I think, I really don't know much about gangs in general, aside from what, say, you see on TV, like on The Sopranos, which is not much, right? The inner workings of gangs and their philosophy and thinking. But, I think that she wanted to be perceived as, like a cool person, like to gain favor and to be treated well by, say, them. And so I think that somehow they let it be known that, they wanted to basically have some kind of entertainment, if you will. And I really say, quote, unquote, entertainment in the form of rape. And so she it was almost as if she was going to be the madam of sorts in a brothel, that sort of thing.
Right.
And provide, some girls for them to have fun with, have a good time with.
And
so,
can I ask how she set you up? What?
Well, yeah, as I said, I thought she was my friend. She wasn't like a long-time friend. I had known her for, I don't know, I can't remember really, maybe under a year's time. But we were hanging out as, friends do. And I was, 16. So, at that age, I think you have friends coming and going into your life because that's kind of that time of your life when that sort of things happen.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not a very good judge of character at that age either.
Oh, no, we're all, we're experimenting with who fits with us in our, realm of getting along and all that. And so I had already been hanging around her for a short time, I'll say a few months. And then one day her and her family owned a mahjong parlor. That's a place where people get together to gamble. And that may sound really, I don't know, exotic or very out of the ordinary for, Western listeners, but being Chinese, that was just one form of business. For instance, my family, when I was growing up, we owned a sewing factory, and then other families might own a restaurant or a laundromat, So that was just another form of business, and in the same way where I might have friends over to my home. Well, my home was my sewing factory, and her home or her place of business, and where her family hung out was her mahjong parlor. So I was over at her place, kind of quote unquote her place, one day, and she asked me, and she told me that her boyfriend was visiting. This would be like her long distance relationship boyfriend was visiting from Seattle, and asked me if I wanted to just come out and hang out, go to a club, and it would be a group of people. It would be like the group, her boyfriend and his group, and just the group of friends, a large group of girl friends that we had around here in San Francisco as well. Similar to like just any group of girls and guys that would go out and hang out, have a good time. So that's how I was invited to go with her and meet her boyfriend and his group. And so it was a pretty large group of girls that got together, some girls that I knew, and a group of guys, and there were a couple of girls that were visiting with the group of guys as well. So that's how we ended up first in a situation where we were at this nightclub in Chinatown, on the outskirts of Chinatown.
Okay.
And
then what happens? I mean, I would assume you were having fun for part of the evening before things turned ugly.
Right. I have to sort of give what might be a little more detail than necessary, but it contains a key part of what happened too. Is that the first night we went out was like probably a Friday night, and long story short, the long story short is that we went into this nightclub in San Francisco, Chinatown, and it seemed like it was not a good situation for the group of guys to be in because of, some rival gang or something like that. So we all decided to leave. And then as we were out on the street deciding where to go and what to do, I and some of the other girls basically were deciding that, okay, we're just going to all go home then. And then the girl, I'll call her Carrie, she said that, she's going to go back to the hotel with the guys. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, wow, is that safe for a girl to go back to a hotel with a bunch of guys? And because I grew up, as I mentioned, in a sewing factory, and the sewing factory ladies just have stories to tell endlessly about, what's going on in the community and all the bad things and all the gossip and all the crimes and whatnot, everything, because that's what, people do when they're, working at some tedious chore. Anyway, right. And so Carrie said that she was going to go back to the hotel with the group of guys. And I remember thinking, gosh, that's safe. And so I had that thought. And so I went home, and everybody went their own way, wherever that was. And I was at my house the next day when Carrie called me and said, well, that didn't seem to go over very well. The night was cut short because of that, rival group situation. And so let's get together the girls and the guys and the whole gang and let's go out again. And I thought, yeah, sure, why not? It's Saturday night and sounds like fun. And so I went so there we were, a large group of people. I'd say at least 20, if not 30 people of, mixed group, girls and guys. And I was sitting next to this one guy, and I'll call him Jay. And we were just chatting and we were dancing and having fun. And I was attracted to him, and I thought he was attracted to me, and that was a good thing, And
sure, of course it is. At that age, at any age, we love it when somebody finds us attractive.
Oh yes, and so we ended up shutting the place down. It was 2:00 in the morning, and we shut the place down, and everybody was still having a good time. And so somebody, suggested, well, let's just basically move the party back to the hotel. And I remember thinking that, oh well, it must be safe. It's probably okay. It must be safe because Carrie had just gone to the hotel with the guys last night, and here she is, fine and dandy.
Nothing bad happened to her, right?
Nothing bad happened to her. She's a girl. There's a whole gang of guys in the hotel, so it must be safe. These guys must be okay. So I went, and the group had rooms all throughout the hotel, because they were staying there, and so I ended up going into this one room with Jay and this other girl who also lived in San Francisco, and this other guy who also lived in San Francisco. You could call him one of the host guys of the host gang. Put it that way.
There was like 4 of you.
There was 4 of us in this one room,
right?
Which had a door, accessible door to the room right next door. So it was, basically a situation where it was like 2 rooms with an adjoining door.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, and so we were just, basically chatting. The 4 of us were chatting, having a good time. Nothing sexual going on at all. Just, having a good time chatting. And then at some point, and it was getting late now because remember we had left the club at 2:00. So at some point it was getting kind of late, and the other couple, I'll just call them a couple, went to the next room, and just shut that door behind them, and then Jay and I were then left in this one room where we had been, and we climbed into bed, and I was not planning to have sex with him. At that age, I just felt like I was comfortable and liked being with him, and I felt that if I wanted to have sex with him, that would have been my choice, and I didn't plan on having sex with him, but I was not opposed. I was definitely up for and interested in just being there and cuddling. So that was the situation that I found myself in, and that was actually a really, really nice situation for me at that time. And I think I really have to stress that too at this point, because up until that point and through that point, it was a really, really pleasant experience. And and I think I'm just going to dwell for a second in that experience, that it was a really, really pleasant experience. Here I was with this guy that was really attractive to me, and I was attracted to him, and he was attracted to me. We were in this intimate place. So there we were. Okay. All right. Moving on.
Oh, I get that, Susie. I totally get that. I think so many rapes, they start off this way, and that's where a lot of the potential for a woman to feel shame, originates, because we were enjoying it up to the point where we actually get raped.
Yeah. So okay, then so we were in bed, and we weren't even kissing or doing anything sexual at all. We were just talking and chatting. But I guess, in hindsight, that was because it had already sort of been worked out that, this was going to be a gang rape. I mean, I don't know how they refer to it from the other side, and I'm saying this with like total cynicism, right? I don't know how they refer to it and look at it, like, oh, I think we're going to do a gang rape tonight, but it had already been planned out, and I just happened to be the unfortunate victim. So what happened was...
And this man, Jay, that you're finding attractive, he was obviously a part of it.
Yes, he was. Although in hindsight, and now in hindsight means 30-something years later, with a lot of discovery and examination and sort of poking around to find as much truth as I can, right? I know in hindsight that he was not wanting to do that, but because he was a more junior member of this gang, he really had no choice. Otherwise, he would have been beat up or ostracized or kicked out or whatever the consequences are that are negative to someone in that position. So he really, had no choice. Or they could do something as bad to him as they were about to do to me, right? I mean, I don't know what the male equivalent is of a rape. And not in the physical sense, but to somehow humiliate you or just dehumanize you or treat you as, badly. Right. So he really had no choice, but he was going to go along with it because he had no choice in his own mind. And so there we were in the room, in the dark, in a bed, and the next thing you know, there's a phone call the phone rings, and he gets up and answers it. And it was a brief conversation, and then he comes back over and gets back in bed. And I think the phone rings again, and then he gets up to answer it again, and then he comes back again. And then next thing you know, there's like a knock on the door, and he gets up and answers the door. And the lights kind of flashed on and off for a second, and I guess so that people could get their bearings. And so the next thing you know, there's like guys just piling in to the room, guys just, walking into the room. And as I said, and then the lights kind of flashed on and off, and they were maybe on for, maybe a few minutes at a time at some point because, I think they just needed to get their bearings and all that. And so I was still in bed, horizontal, and then I found myself then with like guys just basically all around me, and they sort of found whatever seating chairs or maybe not, and some of them might have been standing. I don't know, but next thing you know, I just found myself with guys all around me, and the thing that I really couldn't believe too was that I actually recognized some of those faces. I recognized someone from junior high school, and mind you, that wasn't that far away from me age-wise at that point, maybe a couple of years ago. I recognized a couple from junior high. I recognized a couple of guys from friends of a boyfriend of another girlfriend. So, and then some I didn't know, and I and then I just and then they started. Someone would started just saying something like in a sort of, I don't know, sort of sleazy, flirty sort of a way, and just basically being leery and jeery. And someone started, I think, probably started to, touch me or just handle me, and I thought, oh my God, and it's like started. It was dawning on me that, oh my God, I'm about to be raped. I'm a piece of meat. Is basically what it amounts to. I'm about to be, devoured and just be at the mercy of whatever they want to do. And of course, as I mentioned, growing up in the sewing factory, you hear all kinds of horror stories about everything because sewing factory ladies probably, exaggerate anyway. But I realized that, oh my God, this is one of these horror stories coming true, and I'm it. And yeah.
So it's interesting to me that they turn the lights on and off. It's almost as if they themselves couldn't face what they were about to do in the light of, in full light. You know what I mean?
I kind of think that was to keep their identity hidden for purposes of a crime identification.
Okay.
I don't think it was that. Yeah, I think it's less so. They were less noble than what I think the idea that you're getting at.
I wasn't suggesting nobility so much as I was suggesting shame. But I hear what you're saying. They didn't have any shame. They were just trying to protect their identities.
No, I do not think the shame was a part of their emotional set at that moment. No.
So
no, yeah.
Did you speak? Did you find yourself unable to speak? Because I know for myself, as an incest survivor, when I have been date raped, I oftentimes cannot speak. I can't move or speak. I just become immobilized. But that's, of course, training from age of 6 on,
I just was, like I said, I think the only thing that I felt and thought was, oh, my God, I am about to be raped. And I can't really say that I used in my mind the word raped either, although I knew it. I knew it, that I was about to be their victim. That's what, I think that was the sense, the word victim. I was going to be their victim at their mercy, have them do whatever they decided they were going to do to me. And that just felt like the most horrible, horrible thing in the world. Like I said, they were all around me. It's not like I felt like there was any escape, if you will. There was no fighting. How does one girl fight, if you will, like 6 or 8 or however many guys who were like all around me. It's like an Indian dance, American Indian. And there's no insult intended to any American Indian person listening, but it's when you have like a dance of people all around, like a circle, and there's something in the middle. I felt like I was sitting in the middle, right? And they were doing and so how do you get away from that? So I just felt horrified, and I remember saying to myself, but wait a minute, you know me, to sort of like in a mental, not out loud, but in my mind, I was thinking, because I as I said, I recognized some of the guys, and I remember thinking, like, wait a minute, you can't do this. How can you do this to me, do anything bad to me? I know you, and so obviously I found out that wasn't so, because at this point, probably the lights were off, and I started to scream, because I knew that there were people in the next room for sure.
Right.
And I don't really know. I mean, it's not. I don't think you have time to really think out that, okay, wait a minute, this was a setup, or these people are part of that other group in the room, and you don't really have time to think about that, to sort things out and make sense of it,
Right.
All I knew was that, oh my God, I'm going to be this victim, and I need to scream for help. And so I did, because I know that at the very least the people in the next room would hear me, and maybe, hopefully, someone else nearby would hear me. So I started to scream, and after I screamed, or as I was screaming, someone in the room took a bottle and broke it against whatever the nightstand or shelf or something, and said, "You better shut up, or I'm going to cut up your face."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I remember thinking to myself, well, shit. It's like, I know I'm going to be raped. I don't need to have a scarred up face either. I don't need to have the outward injury as well as the inward injury. So I guess I had enough wits about me to make that decision to shut up, and so I did, and I knew that there was no way out, if you will. I guess you probably hear me break it up a little bit, and so I knew that I better shut up, because you're 16 or 17. we all want to be pretty, right?
Oh, but let's face it, that's not the whole thing. Anybody who was going to take a broken bottle to your face could just as easily cut your throat.
Oh yeah. And
your life was very definitely on the line.
Right. So I said, okay, I'm shutting up. You don't have to convince me anymore. I mean, in my own mind, right? So I shut up, so I knew there was no way around being raped, being their victim, and I knew there was no sense in fighting. So I decided in my own mind that, okay, I'm about to be raped. I don't need to be scarred in the face either. But at the same time, and I'm kind of surprised, and I'm actually kind of pleased with myself at my next thought, which is that I said to myself, okay, fine, if I'm going to be raped, I'm not going to give you the pleasure of having me, fight and be sort of like a willing or even unwilling participant, because somehow in my own mind I concluded or believed that if I was going to be struggling, that would sort of add to their pleasure or add to this event.
Obviously.
So I decided I'm going to be a dead body. If you're going to have to rape someone or fuck someone, whatever, you're going to have to do it to a dead body, basically, a limp, lifeless body person.
Right.
So I just decided that I pretended to black out, but I was the furthest thing from it. I was definitely there, as much as I would have liked not to be. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Feel free to ask me anything, anytime, because I could use a break.
Okay. Oh my God. Well.
Or I could use a different, anything.
Oh, Susie, I just, do you have any sense of how long this went on?
What, time-wise, I have no idea, but this went on until everyone had their, everyone decided they had theirs, okay, to put it that way.
Right.
And then they all left, and then Jay came back into the room somehow mysteriously or magically. And, I don't know, it's like silly me, I just didn't know. As I said, I didn't know, just to digress a minute, I didn't know until years later, 15 years later, that it was a setup. So, okay, back to the room now.
Well, by the way, just as an aside, I mean, this is what, we are basically raised with the victim mentality a lot of times as females. So whatever's happening to us is supposed to be our fault, something that we caused. And then, there is this sense that somehow or another, I must have, since we turn all of that anger in on ourselves, I must have done something to deserve this, becomes the whole script, rather than, these people are out to get me and they're evil and dark people, right? I mean, that's just not the first place we go usually.
Oh, it's true. And since we're on that topic for a second, I mean, that's definitely true in the case of rape. But even in the case of, say, if you parked your car somewhere and you got your windshield broken into, because they broke your windshield, and to steal your whatever cassette deck, your stereo deck or something. And we feel that way. We feel, oh shoot, I shouldn't have parked there, stupid me. And this happens quite frequently, but the positive thing about that is that if that happens to us, we got our car broken into, got our stereo deck stolen, we can feel angry about it. Even if we blame ourselves, we can go to the neighborhood bar and vent to the bartender and say, well, shit, I just got my car broken into. I'm really pissed off. And you can vent to the bartender. You can vent to a few friends. You can vent to your spouse or whatever, whoever, and you'll get sympathy. You get to vent. You get to have your anger expressed and then have it dissipated, and then you're like, by and large, okay. And then next time you might think a bit about whether or not you park your car somewhere, or you might think, well, you know what, that was a perfectly okay place to park. It's just that some, vandal. I'm trying to curb my language. Not that I'm really generally potty mouth, but sometimes.
It's really okay. This is the shame-free zone. So.
Okay. Anyway, so but you just know, in the case of your car, say that, well, that happened and it was unfortunate, but life goes on, and part of that is, and you move on, and part of that being able to move on is because you can express about it and you get sympathy and compassion about it. But in the case of rape, that's not true, right, Veronica?
It's often the case of, well, why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that, and didn't you know that's going to happen, and well, boy, if that ever happens to me, I'll do this. I mean, famous last words. Everybody's got some pretend scenario about how they would handle a rape, but when it actually happens, it is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And no matter what you do, if you fight too hard, then you got, well, no wonder, you got beat up. And if you don't fight at all, well, you should have. I mean, it just always comes back to somehow or another, you as a woman coulda, shoulda done something better.
Exactly. And on that topic, here's one thing that I discovered sort of recently, and that would just be in the last few years, because I've done so much work and examination and soul searching and outer searching that to try and just help myself, heal my boo-boo, so to speak. But on that topic, in that area, what I discovered recently is that, and it was to my shock too, that how a lot of people say that, oh, well, she shouldn't have dressed that way, or she shouldn't have been in that neighborhood, or she shouldn't have talked to this person or gone there and that. And people like to say that, and as often as not, it's women that will say that too. Okay, definitely men, but as often as not, it'll be women too. And maybe in some ways, maybe more often women too, because the crime or the situation of rape is so horrible that if someone can imagine being raped, it's so horrible that they would want to say that, oh, no, I won't find myself in that position. I won't find myself in that situation because I won't dress that way. I wouldn't go there. And so they give themselves a sense of control over what really is uncontrollable. They don't want to feel that they're in a situation that is so beyond their control. So they want to feel like, oh, no, I wouldn't go there and I wouldn't do that. Therefore, it's her fault. She did it, You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is what happens with women a lot of times, is that they are wanting to exempt themselves from the risk. It's like,
exactly.
It's like, well, I would handle that better, and this gives them a sense of, well, that'll never happen to me.
Yes, so it makes them feel safer, and, I guess it's understandable. I mean, I guess I can understand that. For the longest time, I was, I feel like you feel pissed off, you feel angry. Why do people say it's me, or even I say it's me, and then why do people on top of that, in addition to that, say it's me? And so now I understand a little bit more myself why, So that was kind of helpful. It's a little bit, I don't know, saddening to know, but that also helped.
It's very sad. It's incredibly sad. But this is why we're sharing these stories, because the fact of the matter is that a lot of women are raped. Not a lot of women, I don't suppose, are gang raped. I think your story is particularly poignant and moving and touching, because that this really is touches upon a deep fear, that most of us have of being in a situation where you are literally helpless and there is no way out, and having to endure something like that.
Yeah, that in a way, well, okay, so my story, that's actually kind of only part of my story, and it's not something that too many people know about, but I think I do want to share it. And my therapist, who's a great person, knows, and maybe a few people know, but that's only kind of part of the rape, if you will. That night, the group of guys actually came back in one more time because I guess they had felt that they hadn't had enough or wanted more or something, and then magically Jay disappeared, and then after they left, he magically just reappeared again. And of course, this is actually still part one. And then,
and can I just ask a quick question about Jay's demeanor, because I think this is also one of those really confusing things about rape, is that oftentimes the people who are perpetrating against us act as if the behavior is normal and they treat us kindly. So is Jay coming in between the gang rapes, coming in to be your friend?
He was. He acted like he was not a part of it, like he somehow didn't know that they had done this horrible thing. He came in and was basically comforting me. And again, since I didn't know that he was part of it, I didn't know how this was happening timing-wise. And so he was my hero, if you will. He was the good guy because he wasn't actually participating.
Were you crying and he was holding you while you're crying?
Oh, definitely. I was sobbing and crying, and it was interesting too in some ways, because some of the familiar faces were of people that I knew that were living in San Francisco. Initially at that point, I thought they were more like the residents of the San Francisco group rather than of the out-of-town group, which he was a part of. So to me, he was a good guy, which was, of course, only in a way partly true. Maybe in his heart it was true, but in his actions, he was definitely, a part of the setup. So anyway, and then again later on, separately, two other guys came in for, you could say, a third stage of this evening. And then at some point I noticed that it was getting daylight and it was like really quiet, because during all of that was happening, what's going on in my mind was that, oh my God, like, am I even going to be alive after this? Like, how am I going to be over this and out of here? And so a big thought of mine was that, just being alive, how am I going to still be alive after this? Because, I mean, heck, if they can do this and, gang rape like this, they can just as easily kill, right? And that was my thought.
Well, they had already threatened you with a broken bottle. So did you at any point think about escaping? Or you said they had rooms throughout this floor, so the whole floor is kind of being dominated by this gang, right?
I don't know about the whole floor, but I think I was aware, I think, that they had rooms on other floors as well, so it might not have been the entire floor just of them, but at least some rooms on the floor I was on and some rooms on other floors as well. But escaping, I mean, I don't know what word that was exactly. I mean, as long as there were people, the guys, right there with me, I didn't feel like I could escape, kind of quote-unquote escape. So I was. So
whenever the rapist left, Jay came back in basically to keep an eye on you.
I don't know that was his actual intent to keep an eye on me, but I don't know. Maybe he just didn't know what else to do with himself, or maybe he was keeping an eye just to see to kind of gauge the situation, almost like facilitator, of
right.
sorts. Yeah, maybe that was his role. I'm just thinking out loud right now.
But you were never really left alone.
I was never really left alone until after, basically it was like the first slew of guys, and then they left. Jay came back in. There was a second slew of guys, which might have included some of the original. Jay came back in, somehow left. Then there was these two guys separately, two guys together. And then after the two guys left, then it was starting to get light out, I could see, and then it was starting to quiet down, was the way I recall it, where I didn't hear anybody else seeming like they were coming back in. And when that was happening, when I sensed that, things were quieted down, that's when I sort of took my opportunity to, throw my clothes on, which had, my pants had been torn. So I was lucky. I felt lucky that I had this long jacket on, long coat on that I thought that I put over myself, and I left, and I just kind of stealthily, is the way I'd like to put it, just kind of, made my way out of the hotel, just trying not to see anybody, trying not to be stopped by anybody, just get out of there. And so I did, and I got out and I walked home, and
wow.
Yeah,
Well,
I didn't tell.
And Jay disappears at some point, obviously.
Right, yeah, and yeah, and so that actually, all of that.
So he's comforting you, but he never offers to get you out of there.
No, because again, in hindsight, that was not an option for me. It was not an option for him or anybody to, any single person to be an ally to me.
Yeah, and your screams had gone. Nobody responded to your screams, except to threaten to cut you with a bottle.
Yeah, nobody responded. Although, oddly enough, the guy who was next door in that next room, later on, a few weeks later, I think it was, he ended up calling me, and because I think he just felt bad. He that guy in the next room had not participated, but he felt bad, and he ended up calling me saying, somehow letting me know that, I don't know why this would be of comfort to me, but somehow he told the girl that he was with to be quiet, like just, like stay mum, lest this happen to you or us too, kind of a thing,
Oh, so there's like this whole atmosphere of fear
yeah.
that kind of pervaded everybody, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was like as if you had it probably was basically what it amounted to. The top level guy or guys in the gang just wanted to do this, and anybody else that wasn't, it's sort of like you're either with me or you're against me kind of a thing, right?
Right.
And if you're against me, well, bad things are going to happen to you too, kind of a thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So see, all this again, Veronica. Now, all this is still only part one, and I really, I really don't want to spend that long on the story because I really rather get into some of the more positive, helpful, healing aspects of it, through my healing
journey. Absolutely. That is the point. That is the point of telling this story, is to be healing. So.
Right. But I do want to get into part two because it's which is that I want to tell us as quickly as possible, is that the girl who set me up, because she later feigned, that her innocence, that all like, oh my God, this happened to you kind of a thing. And because I was not aware that she was part of the setup, I was still hanging around with her, and I was hanging around with her at her place, her gambling place, and her brother-in-law one day and his buddy, this is like after hours, sort of after the business hours, we all just, Carrie was saying that, oh, well, let's go down the street to, such and such club and, have a drink and, dance and stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, whereas that other night I had barely had a drink, because I'm not a big drinker, so when Carrie said, let's go down to, club, whatever, and do some dancing and have a drink, and the people that were going to be going with us was her brother-in-law, who was, married and had kids, and his buddy, who was also there at the, at that place of business at the time. And I thought to myself, I was thinking in terms of safety, and I thought, oh, okay, well, it's her brother-in-law who's married with kids and his friend. So, okay, this is a safe situation, and honestly, I could use some self-medicating, not the exact terminology that I knew at the time, but that's probably what it amounted to. It's like, okay, I could use a drink, some self-medicating, some escape, from that ordeal that I had just gone through, like probably a week before. And so I went with them. It was a group of us 4, and I ended up getting drunk and pretty much actually spurred on with these drinking games that Carrie was kind of encouraging me with. And I was only so happy to kind of, get drunk and lose myself and lose whatever pain I was feeling from the gang rape earlier anyway. But I had a certain amount to drink, and I found myself just starting to feel sick. And so at some point, we all decided to go home, and I thought I was going to get dropped off first because of the directions of where we lived. But I found that they dropped her off first, and I thought, oh, how odd. And I still have this vision of her just gingerly walking up the stairs, and me thinking to myself, oh, that is so odd. And I thought, oh, my God, this is not right. And so as it turned out, I was sick to my stomach, and I was thrown up out of the car. And you know how you feel when you're in that physical condition where your head is spinning and you basically can't move, and you just that's how you are. But that's also where I was when I realized that, oh my God, it's like that same realization when I realized that I was going to be gang raped when I was in that hotel room. I had that same realization that, oh my God, they're going to do the same thing to me. And because, they weren't taking me home, they took her home first. And sure enough, they took me to this hotel room, the two of them, and at that point, I was in this mental, emotional state where I said, oh, shit, what's two more,
Uh-huh.
But even though I said that, like sort of articulated it in my brain, it really wasn't true. It was, what I really felt was like, I can't believe that people can be so shitty. I felt like, I had fallen down on a banana peel, that being the metaphor of a gang rape.
Yeah.
I felt like I had fallen down on a banana peel, and instead of somebody coming over to help me up, like say maybe these two guys or anybody else, I felt like someone was coming over and basically kicking me a few times on top of that. And that's what these guys did. They took me to this hotel. They gang raped me, if you can call two guys a gang. I do. And my whole faith in the human race had just about gone to pot,
Of course.
And yeah, and still then, believe it or not, Veronica, I did not know that Carrie had set me up. Okay, obviously her name is Karen. I can't.
Do we really care about protecting?
I don't know. Right. So and still, Veronica, I did not know that was her. But this is part of it because I'm. Here we get to the healing part or the symptoms and the healing from symptoms and of the after effects is that because I was attracted to the guy, Jay, from that point on, I wasn't aware of it, but anytime I was attracted to a guy ever after, I would feel anxiety. I would basically run in the other direction. So if I felt attracted to someone, I couldn't approach him, smile, or be friendly or whatever. I basically have to run away or just not be allowing myself that attraction. And I just had this the other day, had this thought the other day too, that it's a good thing probably that I didn't know that she set me up, because if I had known that, my ability to make friends and to trust, friends would probably have been equally impaired. So,
Right. It's how can you know these things when you're young? But it's not just that. I mean, the whole way that as women, I think, we're raised, or at least from our generation, the way we were raised, to not really be empowered, to not really be able to say no, to anticipate what's happening to us. Just this victim mentality that I think a lot of us absorbed. Certainly that was the case for me, where I felt like I was walking around with a sign that said basically, I'm the perfect rape victim because I don't even know how to defend myself. I don't know how to prosecute you. Whatever you do to me, I'll just sit here and go, oh, I must have deserved it.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mentioned earlier that I wasn't able to, I basically, after all that happened to me, I really couldn't talk about it to anyone. I couldn't talk about it to my mom because she was of the variety of mom that would just blame me for, like not listening to her or going out or something like that. And I felt like I could not talk about it with other girls, my friends, because mostly, because there were other girls that were that had gone out those evenings as well. I felt like I couldn't tell them, and I felt like I couldn't get sympathy from them, at least in my mind, because I felt like they would have thought, well, thank God it was you, not me. No, thank God it happened to Susie, not me,
Sure.
Because it could very well have happened to anybody. So I felt like I wouldn't have gotten sympathy from them. And then the person that I, like I said, cluelessly thought was my friend, I told her, but she just sort of feigned some kind of, like, oh shit, what assholes or something, and then kind of like, probably started talking about something else,
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. In both cases, she never, ever let on that she was a part of it, and, and I never knew until it was pointed out to me.
Just dismisses it as like, what assholes, and then what shall we have for lunch, huh?
Right. And so I think because I couldn't talk about it, and especially because this second thing happened with her brother-in-law and the other guy, because that happened that second time, I think what got ingrained in me was that I better just not talk about it. I better keep quiet about it because, expressing the fact that I was raped or gang raped somehow gives license to other people to do it too.
Exactly. You become the designated victim. It's like, well, so,
exactly.
It happened to her. This is what she's for.
Right. Take out your rape needs here,
Right.
Right. And so I couldn't talk about it, and I didn't talk about it. But it was far from, a repressed memory of sorts that people have. And the general message that I think people in general get about anything bad anyway is that, get over it. Let the past be the past, bygones be bygones, forget it, move on. I think that seems to be what, we as a culture like to think we're able to do, and the reality is we can't. We can't. We really can't. We have to, the old cliche, the only way out is through, is true, where you have to cry it out, you have to express the anger, express the pain and the confusion and all of that. All of that.
Absolutely, and this is one of the, I think, one of the most damaging aspects to our current culture is the idea that, we've got two ideas out there. One, that you can't get over it. And Susie, one of the things that totally attracted me to your work and your art and your message when I first met you was the fact that you definitely model the idea of moving past the rape. You've been talking about it more of late. You just did the newspaper article, and I think it's an incredibly brave move on your part. But your music has always reflected this attitude of reconnecting with your own sex appeal, reconnecting with the fact that you are a sexual person, and so that's the point where you don't allow the rapist to win, because the model that we have a lot of times is that you're so traumatized by what happened, and that means that you can never function again, or you can't be sexy again. And I think the idea is that it was a hugely traumatic thing, and your reaction to that has been to go back and reclaim your sexuality and not allow the rapist to own that.
Well, that's definitely true. I mean, I feel like the after effects were so great, and I part of it was I wasn't able to dress. I ended up dressing down the same way where it was where I was subconsciously running away from attractive guys. I was also subconsciously dressing down so I wouldn't attract attention. Because definitely I was dressed to be pretty that night, as I do, and we like to do as women. And so I in the 15 years that I was in denial, but I don't want to dwell on that too long. I think, what you talked about earlier was, getting past something, or sometimes we have the concept of healing, and that's something I know I wanted to talk about a little bit, because, most recently, especially after doing that newspaper article, I think that, from the time I started to be able to talk about it through San Francisco Women Against Rape initially, and then through therapy, I always had this feeling that I wanted or needed to heal with all caps. At first, for 15 years, I couldn't talk about it. I was in denial with all caps, and now I was in this active heal with all caps mode, and that's what I felt like I wanted and needed to do, to heal, as if you get cut and you get a scab and a scar, and then the scab goes away, and then you can't see it on your skin to heal. But I actually found, and I've learned that, at least for me, that is almost like a pointless pursuit. For me, it's you use the wording, and people use the wording, healing or getting past something. I think what I've come to see, at least for me, it's not about healing, because I don't feel healed by any means. I don't feel like I've gone back and, I'm as good as new, so to speak. And I don't feel really that I've gotten past it, in the term that you use either, although I understand exactly what you mean. With me, it's more like integrating. That is the word that I feel like is appropriate for me, integrate with, all caps, that I've been able to accept that this happened to me. I've been able to accept the effects that it has had on me. I've been able to accept what I need to do to deal with myself and my life and other people, having this experience. And I think, talking about the healing thing, I think my, my motivations and my origins of doing my CD, the heart of which is the song Charlene, was that I think part of it was that I felt that would help me heal, although thinking about it, I know a bigger part of it was that I felt so alone in my situation for 15 years, that I felt that if other people, other victims of a similar thing, or just rape, didn't have to be a gang rape, if they had someone who, if they knew that someone out there felt what they felt, knew what they were going through, had compassion for what they were going through, so that, this person didn't feel so alone, then it would help them tremendously. Because I felt no one knew what I was going through. And so I felt like if this song were streaming through the airwaves and just kind of hit them unexpectedly, they would know that someone knew what they were going through. And so that was my thought in doing my song, Charlene.
Charlene, Charlene, hold on through the storm. Charlene, Charlene, hold on for the sun. She was 16, wide-eyed and free, wondering how perfect Prince Charming would be. head, but fantasies fail. Lady Luck died. Boys in the gang came and dragged her aside. They broke her defenses, they banged her away, one and another compounding her shame. Charlene, Charlene, hold on through the storm. Charlene, Charlene, hold on for the sun. They can take you to hell, but they can't take your heart, Charlene. When morning crawled in, it finally could end. How boring, they laughed and she couldn't comprehend. People said later it was her fault, the dress that she wore, the way that she walked. Years they go by, 30 years old, dating and waiting and faking control. When her lover's committed, completely enamored, Charlene breaks away and he's totally shattered. Charlene, Charlene, hold on through the storm. Charlene, Charlene, hold on for the sun. You can take them to hell, but it won't help your heart, Charlene. It's time to forgive them. It's time to forget. It's time to put it all behind you and break free. Charlene, Charlene, hold on through the storm. Charlene, Charlene, hold on for the sun. They can take you to hell, but they can't take your heart, Charlene. They can take us to hell, but they can't